Does the ghostly owner of this hotel refuse to leave?
Is Charles Dickens' spirit roaming the third floor?
What rooms are known to be the most haunted?
Find out the answers to these questions and more as we uncover the unsettling hauntings and history from the Omni Parker House Hotel in Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
And this is The Haunted Atlas, a haunted U.S. podcast.
In the interest of fully exploring history of certain locations, Haunted Atlas may discuss sensitive or disturbing topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Just a block from Boston Common sits a towering stone structure, which has been a key part of Bostonian life for over a century. With a surprisingly inviting first-floor bar and cozy accommodations, this looming hotel offers more than meets the eye. It also offers a plethora of history. Today we're talking about the Omni Parker House Hotel. This is located in Boston, and the original owner of the hotel is the hotel's namesake, Harvey Parker.
Which is a very official name, I want to say. I feel like that sounds so official.
It does, Harvey Parker. Maybe it's just because this was the 1800s and it sounds like an old school name to us, like very formal.
That's true. It sounds like a news reporter, so maybe that's what, you know what I mean? Like, I'm Harvey Parker with like a mustache.
With a mustache. That's funny. So his backstory is very important to this hotel in the history of it. He arrived in Boston in 1825 as a 20-year-old. He worked odd jobs and started to save up money so that he could start his own business. He started by buying a cafe in 1832 and converted it to what was called Parker's Restaurant. So this guy has a knack for naming places after himself.
Yes. And so did he know that he wanted to start a hotel specifically, or when he was kind of starting these businesses, was it just kind of like whatever he could get into at the time?
Yeah, I think he was just an entrepreneur trying to get into whatever he could. And
cool.
Why not buy a cafe, I guess?
Right.
It seems like a hard business to get into, but maybe in the 1800s, if you don't have the formal trade training, you're pretty limited with what you can start. Because I'd imagine if he just moved there as an entrepreneur and he didn't have many options as to what he was going to do, it has to be something like the service industry and hospitality.
Yes.
Following the success of his restaurant, he bought an old boarding house in 1854. So that's about 22 years after he started Parker's Restaurant. So a good chunk of time there.
Yeah. He
completely tore down the boarding house and built a 5-story Italianate hotel with a beautiful stone exterior in the place of the boarding house.
Is that like based on Italian architecture?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so if you think of like the Asa Packer house in the Pocono Mountains, the exterior is like Italianate. But this is cool because it's made of stone, which must be absolutely stunning.
Yes.
The hotel opened officially in 1855, so in just 1 year, he was able to tear down the boarding house and build this 5-story stone hotel.
That is always so impressive to me when people can build that fast, especially in the 1800s, because they had nowhere near the equipment that we have today.
Right. But they also did not have OSHA. So there's that.
A fair point.
The hotel, once it opened, was an instant success. And fun fact, the Boston cream pie was invented in 1856 in the Parker House kitchen.
No way!
I had no clue. Such an interesting
such a pop culture thing to come from this.
More people should know this, I feel.
Yes.
What
definitely.
A fun fact. Here, you can get some hauntings and you can get Boston cream pie. What do you need?
Honestly, what more could you want out of life?
For years, the hotel was wildly successful, with really notable names staying there, such as Charles Dickens, and he was actually there for really long stretches, months at a time. It also hosted the Saturday Club, which had members such as Oliver Wendell Holmes and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Some famous names there as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, Charles Dickens is a huge name. That's so cool that he was here. In some capacity.
Right. I always think of these writers and philosophers and stuff as recluse, but to think of him staying in this hotel, which is really in the center of Boston and a huge historical piece, is super interesting to me.
Yeah.
So Harvey Parker sadly perished in 1884, but the hotel did continue on to be a success. So if we take a look at his timeline, he arrived in the 1820s and he was 20 years old. He bought the restaurant in the 1830s. He bought the hotel in the 1850s. and then he died in the 1880s. So he was 80 years old, which seems a decent age for this time period.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And really cool that the hotel kind of lasted after his time.
In 1925, new ownership came over the hotel and expanded it further. In fact, the entire complex was demolished and rebuilt.
The whole thing?
There was only one small annex that allowed the hotel to stay open with limited guests. But other than that, yeah, it was demolished.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
I know. I just think about this amazing building from the 1850s built out of stone that must have been so beautiful. And that's not to say it's not beautiful now, because the building is. But the fact that the historical building is gone is kind of sad.
Right. Yeah. You kind of wish like they had made it a historical building before anything had been fully demolished.
Right. But I guess changing times call for renovation.
Right.
The building that they opened was 14 stories tall, so an additional 9 stories, and made of granite, limestone, and brick, and it opened to the public in 1927. Again, about a 1 to 2 year turnaround, which seems very fast for a 14-story building, but I'm not an architect.
Right. Yeah, it does seem very fast.
A notable event is in 1953 when John F. Kennedy hosted his bachelor party here.
Oh, that's really interesting. So this is like names across time then that have stayed there.
Yeah, it's incredibly famous. And this is something I've never really considered before. Where does a president host their bachelor party? Or do they even have bachelor parties?
They seem too official. It seems like if you're president, you're not allowed to party ever.
Which was certainly true of John F. Kennedy. He never partied or did anything.
Not at all.
Yeah. In the 1960s, the hotel was struggling and was sold off to Dunphy Hotels, which makes me sad to hear that it was struggling. But I guess if you think about it, it was after the Depression, moving into the 60s and civil rights era, so times were really changing.
Right. And Dunphy Hotels, that sounds very familiar. Is that like a big name? That's a big name in hotels, right?
I think so. In 1996, the hotel officially became the Omni Parker House Hotel, and renovations in 2008 further helped modernize the building. So the building that we see today is the 2008 version, and it's known, with all of this history, to be incredibly haunted.
Hello, my name is Brandon, founder of Haunted US. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope you're enjoying our new podcast, Haunted Atlas. If you're enjoying our exploration of the darkest history and most chilling places across the United States, you can support us directly by taking a moment to give Haunted Atlas a review on iTunes. And if it's not too much to ask, tell a friend you think would enjoy our deep dives into America's haunted history. Thank you again for listening.
To kick off the hauntings, we'll start with some of the more general claims, and then we'll go into more specific things.
Okay.
Of course, this was his pride and joy, so we have to have Harvey Parker.
Yes. If we didn't have a Harvey Parker part of the paranormal, I would be so sad.
Where else would he be?
I don't know.
He has been seen in the hotel. Interestingly, he's commonly seen on the 9th and 10th floors.
Huh.
That might strike you as interesting because when he owned the hotel, it was only 5 stories tall.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. I don't think those were part of the original make.
Nope.
So that is a very interesting thing. I wonder if like during the renovations, if they did keep any items, maybe there's a particular item on the 9th or 10th floor that got moved.
That's a good idea. I was thinking that maybe it's just given that they've escalated the height of the guest rooms, he still feels the need to patrol, or maybe he had a room on one of the top floors. So it's relatively the same depth height in terms of the hotel. And so that's why he's up there. But who knows? Reports of his spirit being there actually go back to the 1950s. So this is not a new claim by any means. A guest reported that she saw his apparition look at her and then fade outside of room 1078.
Interesting. So do the claims say if he was, I mean, he must have been wearing like old-timey clothing and yeah.
And what's really cool is he was identified because she saw his photo in the hotel.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So they do have some sort of confirmation, as much confirmation as you can get that it is him.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. As someone who can't picture things, I'm always like, what am I missing? Because I probably wouldn't have put the two together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's actually a really good point. If you don't have the ability to imagine an image, it must be hard to separate it by period because you can't visualize. You'd have to like look up images of period clothes and be like, okay, not 1920s, not 1930s.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But yeah, the guest was able to identify him by a portrait of him. Also on the 10th floor, there are reports of the sound of a rocking chair rocking. And this isn't just rocking because, you know, that could be some light creaking.
Mhm.
It's so loud that it will keep guests awake at night.
So it's really swinging back and forth then.
But it's just the sound of a rocking chair.
Oh, there's no rocking chair.
I don't believe there is.
Well, that is more interesting, but less creepy. Does that make sense? I feel like if I, in my humble opinion, I feel like if I saw a rocking chair moving, it would creep me out. It would, scare me a little bit more than if I heard one but couldn't find the source. Because then I would be able to trick myself into thinking there must be somebody in a rocking chair somewhere near me that I can't find.
And I think it's always stranger to me when the spirit can interact with the physical world versus just an auditory haunting.
Yeah.
So I guess I get that point. I was trying to think, what is this rocking chair? Is it that Harvey Parker is sitting in a rocking chair or liked a rocking chair? And so he's on this floor. He lives on this floor. We're hearing that sound?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Could you remind me what floor it is?
10th.
Okay. So not even in the original building.
Right. Additionally, room 1012 is known to be haunted. One woman claimed to have woken up in the middle of the night to see a tall, bearded apparition at the end of her bed. The man smiled at her and then vanished. And again, she was able to identify it as Harvey Parker based on portraits.
Yeah, that's good that she was able to identify. I honestly think if I couldn't, I again would be so scared that somebody had just broken into my hotel room.
It's the smile that gets me.
Yeah.
I thought a lot about this. It's almost less scary for just a menacing man to be at the end of your bed scowling than it is smiling.
As soon as I'd see that smile, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's over for me. That's it.
It's been nice. Nice last night at the Omni Parker House Hotel.
Right.
Goodbye. Yeah, I think the same. I think the smile really gets you. And this is why I'm wondering if he's up on the 10th floor to monitor the guests, because it's almost like he's taking too much of a vested interest in them. Like, how are you sleeping?
Yes.
Literally.
I think that theory is nice because then it's like, okay, I don't think he means to be menacing. It's almost like he is kind of like the restaurant manager going around to the tables and being like, how's your experience? And so that's kind of nice to think that he cares enough, just maybe at the wrong times.
Yeah. Maybe not in the middle of the night while someone's sleeping.
Right.
Ask him in the morning, or not at all, because you are a ghost.
Right.
Another haunting of the 10th floor is that guests report hearing whispering outside their rooms, only to find no one in the hall. And this could be for a lot of reasons. My top theory is it's Harvey Parker maybe interacting with some other residual energy there, especially if he's trying to care for the hotel. It could be a maid. It could be a manager. He could be saying something like, go turn down this room. I don't know.
Right.
Hotel managers say.
Yeah.
But that's my theory. Do you have any other theories of who could be whispering?
I think there is a possibility of it being like real people and them just like entering their room, or like maybe going around the corner. But paranormal wise, I think your theory makes a lot of sense. If this was a significant place in not only Harvey's life, but other employees of the hotel, it makes sense to me that they would return there.
Right. And I think you have a good point that it doesn't have to be paranormal. That was my thought too, because at hotels, it definitely depends on the soundproofing of the door. Because if someone's in their room, they could be talking at a volume like we are. And if the doors aren't well insulated and sound blocking, it could sound like a whisper.
Right.
So I could take or leave that paranormal claim.
Yeah.
So moving down to the 3rd floor, visitors and staff alike have reported the smells of cigar smoke. I used to think early in my paranormal journey that these scents were super significant until our fellow team member here at Haunted US actually told us that the scent can be from the contraction and expansion of the materials in the space.
Yes, that was my dad's one reasoning for thinking our house was haunted. So it was super interesting to learn that that's just a normal phenomena.
Right. And I know specifically with wood, it can be even more prominent. And I would assume that there's a lot of wood in this building. I'm sure there's a lot of stone, but fabrics, etc. You can never really get the smell of smoke out of things.
Right.
I'll take that with a grain of salt. But there are more paranormal claims on the third floor. The hotel's elevators are called to the third floor for seemingly no reason. And a room on the third floor, room 303, has a bathroom that's known to be haunted.
Ooh.
The faucet in the bathroom reportedly turns itself on, and guests have even said that they'll turn it off, it'll turn on, it'll turn off, it'll turn on.
That's really interesting. So in front of them, it turns on and off.
No, it'll be like they'll get up, turn it off, go exit the room, and then it'll turn back on.
Still interesting.
And I always like to think again, could we debunk this? Could this be something else? Is it a faulty faucet? My thought is that this has been happening for a while, is my understanding. If it was a faulty faucet, it would have been fixed by now because the hotel doesn't want to just be paying for water to continuously run or be frustrating its guests.
Yes, I agree. I think obviously this had probably been reported when it first started happening, and the hotel likely fixed things, or at least attempted to fix it. And then when it just kept happening, they were like, there's nothing we can do. Or they're just using the paranormal to not fix their faucet.
Well, see, that's something that's interesting to me because it very much so could be that where they're like, we can't figure out this faucet. It's haunted, but it doesn't seem like that would be the haunting to lean into.
Which is true. That's a fair point. Just a faulty faucet.
Right.
Seems not great to...
Yeah, I think much more likely to be saying that, oh, and you might see Harvey Parker walking around, this old-timey entrepreneur.
Right.
Like, very important and prominent Bostonian. That would get me. I'd be very excited if I saw him.
Yeah.
Very frustrated with the faucet.
Yes.
And this next haunting on the third floor would definitely get me because it's none other than Charles Dickens.
I would be so excited.
I don't even know what he looks like, though.
I don't think I do either, but if I figured it out and knew it was Charles Dickens, I would have so many questions. Not that we could really ever communicate, but I would be like chasing his spirit around like, please stop. I have so many inquiries into your writing.
Can you make sense of your novels for me? Yeah. So I think that one's crazy cool.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, I'd say most people probably don't know what Charles Dickens looks like. But knowing that this place is haunted, knowing that it had really prominent historical figures there, if I saw someone that looked like they were in period clothes, I would probably look up some of the famous names, and that could help you narrow it down. Interestingly, his spirit shows up as a misty shadow figure, so you can make out some of his features, but it's not a full-body apparition.
I think it makes sense that he's there because you had mentioned that he stayed there for extended periods of time. So it wasn't like he was only here a couple times. He had been there for a while and, multiple times for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I also think your theory of like writers being recluses, maybe that could lend itself to the fact that he's not fully there. Maybe he doesn't want to be perceived as much as like a full apparition does.
That's actually a really good point that I hadn't considered. Maybe he's so sick of people chasing him down the hallway, trying to interact with him and ask him questions, that he's choosing not to appear in his full form.
Right.
That could be. Or maybe he's tired in general.
Right.
I think it's really interesting, though, that he is choosing to spend at least some of his time there because it is really prominent, but it seems like from different periods in time, there's all these famous people there.
Yes.
It's like the layers of hauntings because the building is so old. Well, not the building, but the land is so old. There are more general hauntings that happen throughout the hotel, not specific to any floor. And specifically, many of the halls are said to be haunted. I think ever since The Shining came out, people have hated hotel halls. It's just my theory. It's a working theory. They're creepy. They're long. They're typically not super well lit. But let's talk about what people see. The reports are primarily comprised of things like orbs and other strange light abnormalities. And that's why I say they're typically not well lit, because if you are taking a photo or video in a hotel hallway and the lighting isn't perfect, then your phone or device is going to try to adjust to that. And that's where you can get some abnormalities in photos or videos that could be paranormal, sure, or it could be the digital focusing aspect. Not to say that it isn't anything, because I believe some have been seen with the naked eye, but again, a grain of salt. Guests also report hearing disembodied laughter echoing throughout the hallway. And this is like what we previously discussed. Is it really disembodied laughter? Is it coming from one of the ballrooms? Is it coming from one of the rooms?
A room above, a hallway above. What if they're hearing that? So like you said, we don't want people to think we don't believe in the things they're saying. It's just important to think about what could possibly be going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as people who discuss the paranormal, it's our job to be that skeptic and almost be more skeptical than other people because we want to make sure that we're not spreading falsities. Another thing, one of our favorite hauntings, the rocking chair. You can hear it apparently throughout the hotel. It's just not as prominent as the 10th floor. So that begs the question, what could this be? My theory before was that it's Harvey Parker. But if you can hear it throughout, what could be that prominent that it is on every single floor?
I don't know. Maybe something to do with the vents. I don't know if that is a possibility, if there are sounds that maybe vents make that sound like rocking chairs that have then been put throughout the hotel, because obviously everything's connected. But to me, that gives it more of a paranormal feel. I don't necessarily think there's anything that goes through all of the vents, all across the floors.
But you have a good point, I think. What really is the sound of a rocking chair? Like the creaking back and forth? Is that just floorboards echoing through the vent system? I think it's a good point. It's interesting because you said it gives more credence to paranormal. I feel the opposite. I feel like it's less likely to be paranormal and more likely to be like a structural thing. Because, old buildings creak. And even though it was renovated in 2008, it's almost 20 years old from those renovations. And additionally, from the 90s, 30 years old. So there's bound to be some creaking that happens.
Right.
So the general hauntings of the hotel, I'm less likely to credit those easily to paranormal claims just because with the lights, that can be more than one thing. I think it could be digital things adjusting. It could be fog on glasses. It could be a variety of things. The disembodied laughter, that could be other guests. And then this rocking chair sound, I just can't understand what it could be that is so prominent throughout the whole building.
Yeah.
While you can't book a paranormal investigation here, you can book a room. And apparently people do request the specifically haunted rooms. I think I'm less likely to request 303 than the 10th floor ones because I don't want to deal with that faucet. But now that we've identified the paranormal hotspots, people can go and choose and try to increase their chances of seeing a ghost.
Yeah.
Very cool. If you have already been to the Omni Parker House Hotel, we would love to hear your stories. You can email the team at hauntedus.com and name Haunted Atlas in the subject. You can also find us on Instagram at hauntedus, give us a follow, and send your experience at the Omni Parker House to us via message. Tune in for our next episode to see where we drop the pin next on our adventure across the haunted US. This episode of Haunted Atlas was presented by Sarah Sweeney and Erica Barrett. It was researched by Sarah Sweeney with research assistance by Mitch Goth. Production assistance by David Sweeney. Our executive producer is Brandon Rugsey. Haunted Atlas is a production of Haunted US. Visit hauntedus.com for more information.